Right lads, I'm your host, Man And His Kebab, and welcome back to the absolute guide to the internet, and my first gaming video in nearly a month. Because today we're going to be covering web games, browser games, flash games, whatever particular title you want to put on them. Now, like many others, I spent hours playing these things as a kid. Whether it was on my dad's old Dell computer that was built in the 18th century, or by making valuable use of school computers, by playing Slope. Browser games were pretty popular throughout the 2000s and early 2010s due to their ease of access and no need to download and set them up, as well as being popular amongst developers due to how easy it was to create games for the Flash player and using Unity. Two things that have since kind of gone the way of the dodo. We'll get into why these games died off soon enough. But for now, here's some of the most popular ones that I picked out. Well, first off, let's start off with a few classics. Age of War. A pretty simple strategy game where your goal is to destroy the enemy's base on the right side of the screen. As the game goes on, you progress through the ages, starting off on Neanderthals, then moving on to Knights, Crusaders with Jesus on their side, the US military, and finally, the bad guys from Halo. Age of War is incredibly simple, but also addictive. A trait shared by most browser games. Short pick up and play games, however this trait would eventually prove to be these games' downfall. But again, we'll talk about that later. Bloons Tower Defense also falls into the bracket of simple strategy games. Tower defense games as a whole have always been a popular game amongst the masses, as these games don't really involve much thinking. Yeah, God forbid a strategy game that involves you using your brain. Instead, you simply place units along a predetermined path and wait for the enemies, in this case Bloons, to approach. Hobo. A simple fighting game that involves you taking control of possibly the most disgusting person on the planet. No, not Prince Andrew. In Hobo, you simply walk around and punch, kick, piss, puke, and shit. Ah, fuck, I've been censored again. Through waves of enemies in the streets, in heaven, and on board a spaceship. Fun fact, this was the one and only browser game that I wasn't allowed to play as a kid due to how violent it is. Which is funny because I was allowed to play Happy Wheels. Ah, Happy Wheels. Everybody's favourite two words accompanied by a paddy hat wearing Irishman screaming into a mic. Why are you looking at me? Happy Wheels! Yeah, there's a reason Jacksepticeye made 100 videos on this game, with its level creator giving you thousands of ways to murder your character. Whether that be an old man in a rocket-powered wheelchair, a guy in a Segway, or a father and son on their bike. This game was really driven by its community-made levels, with its members being credited with the creation of all of its most popular ones, such as harpoon runs, sword throws, or spike falls, in all of their hundreds of variations. In terms of longevity of browser games, this is one that could easily keep you coming back for hours a day. The Idiot Test was another game that was pretty popular amongst the masses, because, I mean, it's pretty much in the name. Yeah, it was pretty much a test sort of game that misled you, and they'd made fun of you for making mistakes. Then there's the Henry Stickman games, a group of really well made decision making games, kinda like simpler and shorter Telltale games, where we control the actions of the titular character Henry, as he tries to escape prison, steals a diamond, or attacks an airship. These ones always fascinated me for how well made they are, even though they are browser games. Really good animation, voice acting, well written gags and references. Sure, they're pretty short, but let's be honest, they look very good compared to the status quo of browser games. Yeah, this one may look shit, but it's actually pretty fun. And see, that's where things get complicated when it comes to browser games. Sure, there's pretty simple ones like Footy Heads, Raft Wars, and 8-Ball, but then we have things like Shell Shockers, a full-on FPS game that doesn't even require a download. Yeah, just the 16 digits on the back of your credit card. A lot of the time, that divide really came down to what site your game was on. Whereas games like Cookie Clicker had their own standalone sites, a lot of games are found on sites like Friv, Miniclip, and most importantly of all, CoolMathGames. My favourite way of showing that yes, I do indeed know where some of the US states are. Stumbling across these sites as a 7-year-old was a bit like stumbling across a goldmine. A similar feeling to finding those other sites that you become more interested in your teenage years. Yeah, don't sit there pretending like you don't know. Surprisingly, a lot of these sites are still up and running to this day, and are still as loaded with ads as they were back in 2010. Online browser games were also a huge hit back in the day. Of course there was RuneScape, but let's be honest, no one cares, because back in the day, it was about one game, and one game only. I'm of course talking about Club Penguin. I'm sure most of you know what Club Penguin is, but in case you don't, you basically create a penguin and are thrown onto an island filled with hundreds of other players, where you can chat, play mini games, and customize your own personal igloo. As a kid, this was absolutely fascinating, and a great break from the Call of Duty lobbies that we were used to. And going outside. I definitely did that. Club Penguin also sparked many other clones, such as Habbo Hotel, Binweevils, and Lego Universe. However, none of these really hit the popularity that Club Penguin did. Unfortunately, many of these sites are now shut down. However, thanks to passion projects by some nostalgic players, many have been revived and can still be played as of March 2022. And finally, we have the .io games. These things became popular around 2015, 2016, and almost became a sort of revival for the browser game genre, with many games adopting the .io prefix at the end of their name. The popularity was skyrocketed, largely thanks to Agario, an incredibly simplistic game where you, a circle, consume other circles, some of which being other players, in order to grow in size and become the biggest circle in the game. You can also fire off parts of yourself to consume others, bringing a whole new meaning to the phrase, "you are the weapon." This game and its follow-up, Slither.io, were incredibly popular on the Let's Play side of YouTube, commonly being played by YouTubers such as PewDiePie and of course Jacksepticeye, with Slither.io being similar in concept, but this time involving snakes, and you kill other players by forcing them to hit into your body. Fun. There were of course many others, Hole.io and Tanks.io being other examples. Basically, they were just short, simple, pick up and play games. Yeah, I wonder what that sounds like. Right, so what was it that finally killed these things off? Wait. Oh yeah, it was these things. Mobile gaming was, and still is, a huge market when it comes to short, pick up and play experiences, which just so happened to be the same market that browser games had previously dominated. Over time, many of these games that were once relegated to browsers like Google could now be played on the move, or more commonly, on the toilet. Gravity Guy, Cookie Clicker, 2048 were all games that made the jump to mobile. And in all honesty, there's not much of a sign of these sort of games ever returning to their birthplace. Browser games for their time were incredibly fun and easy to access time wasters. No need for a disc, just the same thing people use to buy drugs. However, it is nostalgic and somewhat saddening to see the downfall of these games that for many of us, yeah, let's be honest, they were just wasting the time that you should have been using to play Black Ops 2. So that was web/browser games, an interesting and technically still ongoing part of internet history. Speaking of internet history, I now must clear mine. Anyway guys, once again I'd like to thank you guys for watching. As you can tell, consistency, it's never really been my strong point, but you know, swings and roundabouts.